Hello friends, and welcome back for yet another day of our 30 minutes a day for 30 days yoga challenge benefiting St. Jude. So today is our last day of learning completely separated asana or yoga poses before we start to learn some sequences. I'm really excited about today's shapes because they're some of my favorites. Today we will be working on hip openers and yoga inversions. Let's get started. Now, if you do have any sort of yoga pillow, such as a bolster or anything you can use as one, so maybe a couple of really thick and cushy pillows, or even if you have a big stack of blankets you can use, anything that will have a semblance sort of like this guy, that could be really beneficial for your practice today. Let's begin with our centering. So find a comfortable seat. Rock back and forth on your sits bones and release your hands somewhere comfortable. Inhale, squeeze your shoulders up and into your ears. Exhale, roll them back and down. And take any other movement you need to get nice and comfortable here. Inhale, squeeze your shoulders up and into your ears. Exhale, roll them back and down. And start to blink your eyes closed or soften your gaze to your drishti. Begin by drawing awareness into your breath and how it feels to breathe into your body today. Do you notice that the breath comes smoothly and deeply? Or does it come rapid and shallow? Maybe caught up in certain places of the body, holding a lot of tension. Breathe and allow yourself to notice as a neutral observer, not casting any judgment or adding any narrative. Just notice what baggage you've brought in here today. And slowly give yourself permission to start placing it down. If you'd like to find your ujjayi or ocean wave breathing, start to drag the breath across the throat, creating that ocean wave sound to heat up the body and build focus and endurance. Begin to lean into the rhythm of your breath. The inhale is said to be a yang or yang energy, building energy and heat. And the exhale is said to be a yin or cooling and relaxing energy. Begin to even them out and sink into your breathing. If you'd like, I invite you to press your hands together at heart center and set your intention for your yoga practice today. Seal in your meditation with a deep inhale through your nose and an exhale out your mouth. Slowly start to blink your eyes open and rock forward onto hands and knees into tabletop. We'll find our Pratapana warm-up. Starting out with some cat-cows. Inhale, drop your belly, lift your gaze and tail high. Exhale, curl chin to chest, tuck your tailbone, push the earth away. Inhale, drop your belly, lift your gaze. Exhale, push and round, chin to chest. Inhale, drop your belly, lift your gaze and your tail. Exhale, curl and push the ground away. Take 3 or 4 more of these. Moving with your breath and in a way that feels authentic and beneficial to you today. And start to come back to a neutral spine position. We'll find our barrel rolls, which we've done once or twice before. So start to press your right sits bone back towards your right heel and scoop it over to the left heel and shift forward until your hips are over your knees again. Exhale, press back, sweep it over. Inhale, press forward. Exhale, press back. Inhale, forward. Don't be afraid to get a little dramatic with it, adding an extra bending side to side or circling out the hips, the neck and the shoulders. When it feels right, start to switch directions. So pin your left glute to your left heel, sweep it to the right heel, and inhale forward. Exhale back. Inhale forward. Exhale back. Inhale forward. Take one more. And start to find stillness once again in your tabletop position. Take a deep inhale through your nose and out through your mouth. All right, quick and speedy warm up for today, but we've got a lot of poses to do, so let's get into it. Let's start out lying on our backs for the most gentle of our hip openers. So have your knees bent and your feet planted. This is our reclined figure 4 pose. It's typically known as a healthier alternative to a pose called half pigeon, which is a really great hip stretch but can be incredibly tough on the joints. So for your reclined version, which is much more gentle but highly effective for the hips, kick your right toes up high, cross your right ankle over your left knee and push your right knee away. You could stay like this or pull your left foot up and off the ground. Now this is another one of those leveled poses, so find that spot where it feels challenging but doable. You might have found it here or with your foot down, or maybe you want more hip opening, so you crunch up, take your right hand between your legs, left hand around, and interlace your hands either on the back of your thigh or on top of your left shin. Wherever you land, make sure your head, neck, and shoulders can come back down. And if you'd like, you can rock back and forth. You can bend and straighten your left leg or circle your ankles. Check in with your breathing. And if you'd like, imagine sending all your breath just into your right hip and glute. Giving it awareness and the space to open up and loosen. Release both feet back to the floor and pause here. See if you can notice a difference between right side and left side. And kick your left toes up high, cross your left ankle over your right knee and push your left knee away. Maybe you stay here, or maybe you pop your right foot off the ground and towards your face. And you might notice more or less sensation on this side. It just means that one hip is a little tighter than the other. Likely whichever hip is a little higher in your anatomy is the tighter one. Stay like this or crunch up. Take left hand between the legs, right hand around, and interlace your hands on the back of your right thigh or on top of your right shin. Pull your head, neck, and shoulders back and down. You can stay here or rock back and forth. Maybe bend and straighten your right leg. Lean into your breath and imagine expanding and compressing just the right hip and glute with each breath cycle. Take one more deep breath here. Slowly release your hands, uncross your legs, and breathe, noticing if your hips and your low back feel a little more even and a little more loose. In your time, squeeze your knees into your chest, curl your forehead up towards your knees, see if you can make contact. Take a deep breath in, expand your belly into your thighs. And as you breathe out, start to rock and roll your way up to a seated position. Okay, next hip opener. If you have access to any kind of pillow or yoga block or big stack of blankets, that can be really helpful here. So this pose called Garland is a really deep, sometimes juicy hip opener, but it can be really intense. As always, we want to avoid any sharp or shooting pain. Discomfort can happen in this pose. Breathe deep, be kind to yourself, and search for that balance between difficult but doable. Step your feet really far apart, and if you have any kind of pillow or stack of blankets, have it between your feet. Press your heels forward and your toes back and pull your hands to your heart. Take a deep breath in. And for option A, exhale and sink down as much as you can. You're in a squat position. If we're really tight in the hips and ankles, this might be as far as we go, and that's okay. It is a lot more active, so feel free to inhale up, exhale down. Very similar to Goddess, except our feet are a little closer together. It's okay if your knees go a little past your ankle for this one. Option B, inhale, grow tall. Exhale, start to sink down and see if you can sit on top of your pillow or stack of blankets or whatever you've got. Maybe you go and grab a couple more pillows so you're able to sit on top of that. To help ease into this, let your feet walk a little closer together to make it accessible, and start by pulling your hands to your heart. If your elbows can reach the insides of your knees, you can use them to push your knees out. Option C is to do this unassisted. If it feels like way too much, don't push it. Bend your knees and put your hands to the ground. Inhale, lift your hips up high. Exhale, sink them low. Inhale, lift up high. Exhale, sink down low. Inhale, lift up high. Exhale, sink down as low as you can. And you can keep your hands to the ground, or try lifting one hand at a time up to your heart. Be very kind to yourself here. Remember, I've done this practice for a very long time. There is no standard of comparison here. Everybody's got different anatomies and different journeys. Breathe in compassion. Breathe out any resistance, tightness, or negative self-talk. If you are feeling pretty good here and you want more, press your heels further forward, your toes further back. If your heels are lifted really high, see if you can step your feet wider. And if they still don't come down, that's okay. Breathe into your ankles, let them loosen. If you still want more, press your tail forward, pull your shoulders back, and push your knees apart with your elbows. Wherever you've landed, breathe in gratitude, and let's stay here for 4 breaths. Maybe you take a little shift back and forth, or maybe you don't. Slowly start to come out of this, maybe releasing your hands to your prop or to the floor. Very gently lift your hips up, and sometimes it can feel good to kind of shift your hips back and forth here. Still keeping a deep bend in the knees if you'd like. And very gently begin to make your way back down to seated. Remember, once we've done the pose, it doesn't exist anymore. We can take the benefits in our body and leave the rest behind. Deep inhale through your nose and let the pose go. All right, let's come into our third and final hip opener today. So there's 2 options for this pose. There's tadpole and there's frog pose. Frog is another really deep, sometimes juicy, sometimes uncomfortable hip opener. So you choose which option works best for you. If you do have any kind of pillow or a stack of blankets or anything else, I recommend placing it underneath your pelvis to make the pose a little more gentle. I'll be cueing this without in case you don't have any objects like this, but just envision you're keeping this between your knees and under your pelvis the whole time. So your option A is very similar to child's pose. Press your big toes together, but instead of pressing your bum back towards your heels, see if you can come onto your forearms and let your knees slide apart. So the big difference here is my hips are in line with my knees. Typically, for child's pose, the hips are way back from the knees. For tadpole, hips are in line with knees, which means we're probably not going to get nearly as close to the ground. If it feels good, you can push back and forth a little bit. Breathe as you do so. This is kind of just flossing open the ball and socket joint of the hip. Now this can be pretty knee heavy. So if you would like to grab some extra padding to put under your knees, or even if you'd like to divert to a child's pose, totally fine. Child's pose can be a great hip opener. If you'd like more deep hip opening, take your frog pose. I recommend facing the long edge of your mat so you've got a lot of cushion, and you can even roll up the ends of your mat to add some extra squish under the knees. So just like before, you want your hips in line with your knees. So draw your knees far apart, but this time kick your feet out. So from this angle, I've got my feet kicked out so my ankles are in the same line as my knees, and my knees are in the same line as my hips. Imagine making an L shape between your shins, thighs, and hips. From here, see if you can lower onto your forearms. Resist the urge to push forward or back. Draw your knees as far apart as you can stand. And again, you can floss it a little bit if you'd like, or you can be still. So pick what works for you. Child's pose, tadpole, or full froggy. Remember, you can always have a pillow under your pelvis. Now make sure your hips are in line with your knees. See if you can come to your forearms. If you still have more space, see if you can splat all the way down like a roadkill froggy. You can stack one hand on top of the other and make a pillow. Let's hold here for 5 deep breaths. It's easy to hold your breath here, but we want to teach our bodies to come out of fight or flight and into resting and digesting via the parasympathetic nervous system. The deeper we breathe, the more relaxed our brains and bodies become. Two more breaths, sink a tiny bit deeper. Very slowly press up onto your hands. Walk your knees together. And gently, gently, taking your time, come back up to a comfortable seat. Pause here and notice any places you feel different. Any release you might feel in your hips or your low back. And again, practicing our non-attachment. Take any gunk we have associated with the poses and let's breathe it out. Deep inhale through your nose. Exhale, let that ish go. Great job. Now let's come into our inversions for today. So inversions are upside down poses, but these are not what they always seem to be typically thought of as. So most people, when they hear yoga and upside down, they think of all these crazy poses like handstand and headstand and all kinds of crazy upside down pretzel-y poses. Those are inversions and they're great poses, but this is a series for beginners. So what not a lot of people know is that you don't have to be fully vertical upside down to be inverted. An inversion is any pose where your heart is above your head in terms of the floor. So anytime my heart is closer to the sky than my head is, or you can think of it as my head is closer to the ground than my heart is, that means I'm inverted. Now, yoga science and medical science tells us that being inverted or upside down for 7 minutes a day does wonders for our mental health, our ability to handle stress, our ability to release stress. So I definitely recommend adding these into your daily life and daily practice. Let's get started. So this next shape is a really great one to do, especially after a really active pose like dolphin, because not only does it bring you into that upside down gentle position, but it helps to really cool off the body and counter stretch after active poses. Now this one, if you don't have any kind of prop, I really highly recommend at least grabbing a pillow or two to place underneath your back so that this pose can be safe for you. So whatever you've got, if it's a couple of blankets, a couple of pillows, whatever you have, place it behind you and directly on your tailbone. Now straighten your legs out and place your elbows or place your hands outside your object. You really want some height here, which is why we need the object behind us. Slowly start to lower all the way down and see if you can push your elbows into the ground. So rather than just slumping and releasing, I'm pushing my elbows down, elbows under the shoulders if possible, and pushing my chest up high and letting my head hang open. So it's a fairly active pose, but made a lot easier with this object underneath us. Now, if this feels like way too much, you can take your object. So mine is a yoga bolster. This time instead, I'm going to sit on top of it so that my head can hang off the end. So I'll lay so that just my neck and head are laying off of the bolster. My throat is open, my head is not quite touching the ground. I've got knees bent and feet planted and arms out to the sides with palms facing up. This is a really gentle way to get into this stretch. So find your way here. You could keep knees bent, feet planted, or if you'd like to add a little more hip stretching, you can straighten your legs and see how that feels. Now, the further your arms are away from the midline of the body, the more of a stretch you're going to get into your chest. So you decide how far you take that. You might not be looking for a chest stretch right now. Soften into your jaw. Let your head hang heavy. And let's take 4 more deep breaths here. Slowly start to prop yourself back up to seated. Whatever your object is, slide it out and away for now. Notice if you feel any areas of lightness or like there was a release, whether of something physical or something emotional. All right, for our last shape today, this shape is deeply restorative and relaxing. So if you've been using your Ujjayi ocean wave breath, start to release that now. We have 2 different options for this last shape. The second option, which I highly recommend, involves getting back on the wall, which is really supportive and deeply relaxing. If a wall is not available to you, find your object again. And this is a shape we've done a few times before in this series. So you'll come onto your back with knees bent and feet planted. Lift your hips up high and slide your object, your pillow, your blankets, whatever you have, underneath your sacrum. So if it's in a good spot, it shouldn't feel pinchy or tight at all. It should be placed just above your tailbone. Release your arms somewhere comfortable and slowly lift both feet up to the sky. So this pose is known as waterfall or Viparita Karani, inverted pose. It's a great way to have the heart just barely over the head. A lot of good benefits happening with stress relief in our legs. It can get a little bit heat building because of the work the core has to do here. So if you've got space to do this on a wall, join me there now. If you're taking this with me on the wall, drag your yoga mat all the way back up to it if it's no longer there. And the easiest way to get on the wall is to press one hip right up against it. Place your hands behind you, and then it's almost like a trust fall. Swish your shoulders back and your legs up. Now it's totally okay if your bum is not all the way up against the wall. Just want to make sure you're nice and comfortable. Place your hands somewhere comfortable, maybe on your hips or your chest, maybe arms out to the sides or overhead. And you can even play with foot movements. You can circle your ankles, or you can open your legs into a straddle, or even take a butterfly shape. Take a few breaths here to play with some movements. Find which ones feel the most beneficial, remembering that we want this to be a really relaxing shape. Then settle into some stillness. Shimmy your shoulders comfortably underneath you, and if you'd like, you can shake your head no. And we'll spend a good full 60 seconds in this shape, whether you're on the wall or have your feet up to the sky and an object underneath your back. Yoga and medical science tells us that 7 minutes a day is best. That's a really long time to start with, so we'll start with 60 seconds. Notice your breathing, and if you find you're still doing your heat building ujjayi, let the breath become softer and gentler. You may notice a little bit of throbbing or pulsing in your feet. Maybe a contrasting sensation of lightness in the legs and groundedness for the upper body. Now, if you're like me, I love this pose and I usually stay here for Shavasana. You can stay here for your ending meditation if you'd like, or if you're ready to come down, bend your knees into your chest. Slowly roll off to one side. And use your arms to press your way back up. Come back onto your mat into a comfortable position on your back. Taking as little movement as possible to make your way back there. Soften the curve of your low back and place your hands somewhere comfortable. Slowly shake your head no to soften your neck. Swallow to relax your throat. Take a deep inhale through your nose and hold. Exhale, sigh it out your mouth. Blink your eyes closed if they're still open. Let your eyes melt into their sockets and your tongue fall into the back of your throat. And for today's Shavasana, we'll bump up to a full 3 minutes. Rest deeply, relax, and I'll let you know when it's time to wake up. Hey guys, and welcome back for yet another day of your 30 days, 30 minutes a day yoga challenge benefiting St. Jude. You guys have come so far in your practice, and I'm so proud of all that you've accomplished. So today we'll come into a couple of our last types of postures before we start combining everything. Today we are focusing on backbends and twists. Now, after each asana or pose that we learn today, I'll be adding in a forward fold. The reason for this is because, one, I have scoliosis pretty severely, which I've used yoga to help me treat. But really active backbends can be pretty harsh on anybody with any sort of spinal condition, which is a pretty large percent of the population. So just for the sake of making sure we're really nice and extra safe, we'll be adding in counter stretches via forward fold so that our backbends don't take us too far and lead us to pain or injury. Let's get started. For today's practice, if you have 1 or 2 yoga blocks, or even if you have a really thick pillow or a stack of blankets, those can be very useful for your practice today.